How's it going, ScrubGamers? Welcome back to another video here at ScrubGames, and today we're going over another discussion video, and the topic for this one is: are you misjudging a deck by its color? Now this is one that I kind of thought of that I wanted to go over based on just interacting and speaking with people who have a hate for a certain color, like myself included. I am one of those people who have a hate for a certain color, like most people know. And I've heard people just really dislike a color, and I always wondered why. And then after talking with people and learning, I found it's mostly due to misjudging what a color does. And I just want to get a bit of a discussion going to talk about what kind of word comes to mind when you hear a certain color for a Dragon Ball Super card game, and why really. So I thought I'd get a bit of discussion, go over each color, go from the color order from red all the way to black, and just talk about it a little bit. But before we do, I do want to say, if you're not already subscribed, feel free to subscribe. It helps me get to my goal of 1,000 subs, which I'm currently over a third of the way there. Just hit 400 not long ago, which triggered a giveaway, because every 100 subs I get, I do a giveaway. So if you want to check out that, go and check out the giveaway video, which explains what you'll be in a chance to win and how you enter it. And it's up until the end of August, so if you're watching this and August is not over, then you still have time to go and check out and join in. And also feel free to like this video if you do like these discussion videos I do. I try to make sure that the discussion videos I do are kind of useful and helpful, and not just not really helping anything. I make sure you get a bit of use out of these. And also comment down below if there's anything you want me to cover on the channel, or anything you want I say that's wrong you want to point out and just help me correct, or anything, just comment down below, and even comment on this video to answer the questions I do ask. And also another thing before we get into it, I do want to shout out to Duke's Gaming for being a sponsor of the ScrubGames webcam locals that happen every Friday, 7 PM BST, which is British Standard Time. Adding some pricing to it for the next few. So if you want to check out, they're free webcam locals done over Discord using webcam. So if you want to check them out, go down to the description box below to join a Discord and open up the webcam locals area by checking on the roles and assign yourself with the webcam role. And also check out, while you're down there, the Duke's Gaming for your TCG needs if you're from the UK. And also, as well as that, shout out to DBS Deck Planet for being the best and only deck building website in the game, having a dedicated team behind them to make sure we have a platform to build decks and view cards. We're also updating it with things as new mechanics come. I've updated with the Z deck and stuff like that, and also keeping it updated with nice functions like being able to import your lists to untap so you can test them out, or even to print off automatically the deck, so that way you don't have to write out each tedious name of a card before you go into events, or save you from doing it on the day. So shouts to them. So without further ado, let's get in the video and let's talk about these misjudging about decks by a color. So as I said, we're going to go by color order. So we'll start off with red. So let's have a look at red. Now, for each one of these, I'm going to ask you a question, and that is, when you think of red in the Dragon Ball Super card game, what word comes to mind? Now, I can instantly see, for someone that might watch this video, if they do, they might instantly think of the word brain dead for red. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say red is brain dead. There are some quite easy decks to pilot, like in this, just with simple choices. But that's not a bad thing for the game. That's good for newer players just to have to get used to it, because the Dragon Ball Super card game isn't the most simple for new people starting up. It is quite complex even for experienced players. I get some questions or some queries about really basic stuff that people just don't understand or forget. So even most experienced players do have a hard time with the game. But what do you think? What comes to mind as a word for when you think of red? Now, I'll give you a little bit what I'm talking to, thinking about that. But when I think of red, and what I imagine most people think of red when reference to the Dragon Ball Super card game, is aggro. Now, is that what the word comes to your head? Is that what you thought when I asked that question? Now, if it is, don't worry, you're not alone. A lot of people I've seen or heard think of red as just an aggro color. It's always trying to be aggressive, aggressively pushing, hitting hard, and not wanting to go to a later game. But that is not actually correct. Like, red is not just aggro. There's quite a few different decks you can play for aggro, and there's at least these things you can play. Like, there's certain red decks that are aggressive. There are decks that are controlling, and red decks that are defensive. Now, you might be thinking, like, where are the control and defensive decks? Well, if you look at U7 Goku, that is not just an aggressive deck. It might have some like cheap plays to be aggressive and push hard, but it's not just defensive. Like, you can play it mid range, you can play it very controlling and defensive. And you have other decks like Freezer Prison as well that are just quite defensive and just push, like trying to save to a later game rather than just kill you really fast, really quickly. So red is not just an aggressive color. It's got quite a few different plays, and one thing you find, even like U7 is the best, once again the best example. Like when I went to UKG like a month or two ago, like a while ago this year, then I played against, across the 2 days, I think 5 or 6 different U7 decks, and none of them were the same. Some were trying to be very aggressive and really push me to finish me off. Some were trying to go to mid range. And some were trying to go to the late game and try and just out advantage with the amount of cards they keep in hand, the fact they can keep high life, stuff like that. So that is where really red is. So if you think you're aggro, then you're not alone, but there is more than just aggro for red. Now let's look at blue. Now this is my one that this is the color that I dislike, and is half the color and half the people that play the color, because I'm going to ask first, what word comes to mind when you think of blue? Like, just really think, what color, when you hear about blue, what word comes to mind for you? Now, I think you have enough time now. Like, the color I think that comes to mind for me is defensive. Like, when I see blue or see people against blue, I instantly think defensive, because like what I've seen, what I've experienced over time playing against people playing blue, and what I've seen from people playing blue, is people just are like really defensive, like very, very defensive, sometimes even too defensive, where they're not really trying to play to win, they're playing not to lose, which is another topic I'll go about at a later point, which is not a good thing to try and do, but that's what I see a lot of people do with blue. They just see blue and they play defensive, but most of the time way too defensively. But blue is not just defensive. It has quite a few different ways you can play. That you can play it aggressive. Like, yeah, blue you can play aggressive as well. You can play very aggro. You can play it defensive. You can play it combo based. Like, for example, Android 16 is a deck that's not really defensive, but like a very combo based deck. It's trying to do certain plays, like cards to go into cards, and it's also got generic good stuff, as how we had it with the Soul Striker reboot over time. Like, it's just very generic good blue stuff. Decks is what we've had for a while until SS3 got hit, so we can branch out. But even then, even while that was a deck, decks were branching out and doing things. So if you look at blue, don't think of it just being as defensive like me. Look at all the different ways you can play. Like, you can play aggro with Crimson. Like, Crimson is one that can probably play into quite a few of these things, where you can play against Crimson. If you think it's just defensive deck and play for that, you can potentially go against aggro deck and just get blown out away turn 1-2. Or you can play against it and have a little combo or generic good stuff. Never just assume a color is going to do a certain thing. Always expect the unexpected, essentially, with most colors. Now let's have a look at green. Now green is one, I imagine most people are going to have to just think of this word when it comes to green. Like, when you think green in Dragon Ball Super game, what word comes to mind? Now a little bit think of that, but I'll give it a little bit of time to think. But I feel that it's going to be this one word there, and that would be hand control. Like, I imagine most people that's watching this now, they thought when it comes to green, they instantly thought hand control is the word that comes to mind for green. And what is one of the aspects of the color, that's not the only thing that green does. Like, really, technically, hand control isn't really just like a thing for green. It's more of its own little, his own category. Similar with like mill. When I think about mill, I don't think of it just being in like a certain color. I think of it being its own category, because you've got mill in red that functions differently. You got ember mill. You got like slug mill, stuff like that. You got mill in almost any different each color, almost each color, not every single color. But it's not really tied to a certain color. It's more as an match type. And I feel the same with hand control. Like, hand control in a cell what we had wasn't really a green deck, but it was hand control, so it was its own category, but people saw it in green. And this comes to mind because a lot of people, when I've seen playing games or been playing against me when I've been playing green, they just look at the fact that green is on against them, and they instantly go to the side deck and they go for Deborah, thinking hand control. That's going to counter it. But not every green deck goes for hand control. That's the thing. You can play green in so many different ways. You can play it aggro, you can play it combo, you can play control, as well as hand control. Like an example would be green caller. That plays very aggressive with a bit of hand control in it. So they're trying to aggro you down, which you're going to need cards to help to thrive off the combo aggro. But at the same time, they add a bit of hand control, so you're losing cards. While also losing cards from the aggro trying to defend yourself, while losing hand control from your cards from hand for the hand control that's built in with it. And then while you're tapping for Deborah, you're still getting aggroed down, so you're tapping an energy down, which could be helpful to help you defend using other cards. The player Deborah, which then probably gets popped, gives you an extra card, but you lost a card from hand, the gains then come board, which will get popped due to green also having destruction. And really, if you're not getting anything, you just tapped yourself out, just gain a card. And also things like you got like Turtles with the combo decks, or even like the deck I've got, Slug Hero, where you focus on comboing to kind of pull off like a certain kind of combo, or even control. Like I've got Green Turtles, where like Turtles is another one where you can look at it and you think it's going to be an aggro deck, but you can also play control to throw people off. Where I think you're going to get aggro to keep in certain things to help strive against aggro, where you're going to control them down and just reduce their resources. And things like green is not just hand control, but a lot of people when they see green, they instantly think hand control, and that can help you. That can make you lose a lot of games, like get an L instead of a win. Now let's have a look at yellow. Now this is another one where I imagine people think the same color. Like when you once again I'm going to ask, when you hear yellow in the Dragon Ball Super card game, what do you think? What word comes to mind? And I imagine a lot of you watching probably think of the same thing, which is control. Well, yes, yellow is all about rest. One of his main functions is resting, keeping things rested, negating effects and stuff like that. But it's not just control. You can play it in aggro. Once again, aggro, control, combo, generic good stuff. Like yellow, just like blue, is one of those colors which, for most of the time, it's been a generic good stuff deck, and that is what you can do a lot of things, but also has different ways to play. Like you can play control, you can play aggro as well, like Sin Shenron. That's one of the decks that has both an aggro and a control version. And if you just go into it assuming it's a control deck, you can get blown out by aggro. If you just come into it assuming it's just aggro, you can get blown out by it being control and go to 6 energy play and just out grinding you for advantage. You've also got combo decks with yellow as well as that. Now this is one of the things where, like, if you just assume and judge a color based control, basically judge a color based on what you assume it's going to be because of the color, you can get blown out because you're just misjudging it and leading you to some losses. This is probably how people are losing, by they're just assuming because it's a certain color, it plays a certain way, which isn't the case. So it's just more. This is more of a video just to help people with that, by giving them a bit of insight into why they potentially get losses, and see if this relates to any of you that are watching. And then let's have a look at black. Now black is one that it hasn't been here since the game's beginning. It did come into around about set 3 with introducing Overrealm, which being a free play, and it was just a few cards. Then it kind of got an actual look of stuff in, I think it was either set 3 or 4. It came into its own being with actual black cards and leaders, and it wasn't until like set 7 or 8 or something like that actually became its own color, more of being like a support color. And since now it's been a support color, like what do you think when you hear black super card game? Because this is a tricky one, because it doesn't really have a core function since it's been so late in the game, like halfway through the games. Since now it actually got its own identity and is played in multitude of different ways. But have a look and see if you thought the same thing as I normally do when I think of black, which is it being an anti-meta. Like if you actually look at it, most of the things that are have been introduced to help go against the meta have not been black cards. Like black's been quite like a support color when it was before it became its own thing. And you got things like Kortsukai, Dark Power Black Marseillan, the Tien and Tau that brought in to deal with certain problematic archetypes at the time. You even got there's quite a few things that are black. I can't think of it off the top of my head now, like Deborah, Jiren. They help deal with certain things mainly being black, so they can be incorporated in every single color, but not be exclusive to a color. Of mainly being black, so black's been quite anti-meta, and even things like decks like Hatchak or yeah, well, mainly Hatchak have been things like decks that are there to like go against the meta at the time, because meta, as you know, stands for most effective tactics available, and a lot of black decks have been there to counter that. But it's not just anti-meta. Like black has had like a majority of wish decks. Like it's had some of the strongest wish decks, and like recently Mecha Kibura. It's also had Star Deck Shenron, Super Shenron, Prunga, very strong wish decks, and mainly most of their decks have been, well, most of the strongest wish decks have been in black. So a lot of people do think when black they think wish, or even aggro. Because look back at the decks we've had before, like recently, before some of the ban lists, black are like very aggressive decks like Gogeta Zeno, Vegek, stuff like that. Even with the U3 stuff being very aggressive. And these are assumptions that you shouldn't really put into when you see the color black, assuming it's one thing, which could be anything. And I think the moral of this topic and this video is don't misjudge a deck by its color. Try and like use a bit of your time with a game to kind of like figure out what the deck is. Don't just assume it's aggro and like mulligan or side for aggro when the deck could do a certain things. Like not every deck plays just one way. It can play a multitude of different ways. So never assume, like misjudge or assume a color a color based on what you think. Open up your mind, because almost every color can play a multitude of different ways. Even some decks can play a multitude of different ways. So that's probably the moral of this video, is to not misjudge a deck just solely based on its color. But that is it for today. I hope that was helpful, and I hope you got some interaction. If there's anything I've missed out or anything you don't agree with, comment down below, and let's get a bit of discussion going. It's nice to get some comments and then just discuss it down below to see what you guys feel. But I do want to say thank you for watching. Once again, if you haven't already subscribed, do subscribe and like and comment on the video as well. It does really help, and it's much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.